Throwdown Nation, we are live on a Wednesday night. We are streaming on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter/X, and Twitch. And throwing down tonight with a guy who is, among other things, the voice of Augusta, Georgia's own Phoenix Wrestling Experience, or PWE, ring announcer Alex Amaya. How you doing tonight?
I'm great, Matt. It's good to be on your show. I'm glad that we were finally able to do this. And hello, everyone out there.
Absolutely, man. And I'll go ahead and say to the folks that are watching live, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the chat. And at the end, we'll do a short viewer Q&A session, and all questions and comments will be read and answered. So we'll go ahead and just get started with the first and most obvious question, and that is, how long have you been ring announcing?
So, excuse me. I got started with ring announcing with PWE, actually, the first night. It was an interesting kind of proposal. I go to the Cowboy and I say, hey, I would love to be a part of this. What can I do? And by this point, I hadn't had much training or anything like that. So the first thing he says to me is, well, we don't have to put you behind a mask. And I took that as a compliment. And he heard my voice. I gave him a little spiel. And so the first show in December of 2023 was my first show. And I'll be coming up on a year here in about a month. So
that is cool.
It's been a ride.
So you kind of had the same experience with Cowboy. You know, he's good at giving you an opportunity.
100%. No, he makes dreams happen, and I'm really glad to have been brought on the team almost with ease. I will say my first show was tough. I was shaking in my boots, and I guess he liked what I had to offer. So backstage, as soon as the show's up, he goes, how would you like to be the voice of PWE? And ever since then, that's what I've been doing.
That is just incredibly cool. So did you ever considered actually wrestling?
Funny enough, I did do a little bit of training here and there, some rings every now and again, even in front of a couple people. One thing led to another, though. I've never had a proper curriculum. I've never had a proper in-ring, proper coaches, other than maybe a couple things over in literally the Cowboys' backyard. That's what I wanted originally. And then once I started to get more into the business aspect, a little bit of the backstage stuff, editing videos and things like that for PWE, I kind of like that a little bit more. The thing about ring announcing is when I'm up there, all eyes are on me. Every single thing that I say is heard. Versus in a match, you kind of have, and not to diminish workers by any means, of course, their job is hard. I'm doing the entire show.
Right.
Every word that I say is magnified, and they will have an opponent if some things kind of get covered up here and there. But if I go, it will get heard, and it will, and whew, it's kind of nerve-wracking. I've definitely messed up a couple times, and it's hard to come back from. I like it a lot more. Not to say that I'm giving up on the dream, because who knows? Eventually, I would love to train. I love the art of it, and I love the feeling of it, and I don't want to close that door.
Right. Yeah, it's funny doing these live streams. I'm coming up on a year doing this in January, and it's been a lot of fun, but it's been a bit of a learning curve. Learning how to operate the various software, learning how to do video and audio editing, and but it's been an absolute blast, and it's really taken my life in some unexpected directions. So that's that's really been cool when you just sort of put yourself out on a limb and and actually sort of take the chance at trying something new. And doing these live, I can't count the number of times that it's almost not a live stream if something doesn't go sideways. But you basically learn to adapt, and I kind of like working without a net, so to speak. And you must too, obviously. Doing live ring announcing.
Yeah. Welcome to the pro wrestling rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Brings you into this whole new world whenever you first start, and once you bet on yourself, right? That's the thing
Oh
about pro
yeah.
wrestling too. That's different from any kind of art form, any kind of theater. It's rehearsed. It's done over a million times. And yes, in theater you have to go off of the cuff sometimes. You have to go on the fly. Pro wrestling,
Hmm.
it's just one big improv. We
Oh yeah.
the same. I'll figure out the card on the same day. I'll figure out, what's going on and what's what and who's who on the same day. And that's tough. I remember the first couple of shows I had cue cards, or I had cue cards, but I wouldn't bring them out to announce with them. And I go, Cowboy, is it okay that I have cue cards? It doesn't look professional to me. I see these guys on TV. They don't have cue cards. And he's like, why don't you use cue cards? What are you doing? Go up there, take your cards with you, man. We're not on live TV. You're fine. And
Yeah.
it kind of eased my mind a little bit, and it does help. But I still try to not, you know, I'm coming to the ring. Still try to give a little bit of a presence.
Gotcha. So, prior to doing the ring announcing work, have you had any background or training in anything similar to that? That kind of gave you at least some background coming in.
So sophomore year of high school, I started choir. I was in a
Hmm.
band as well. Like we were kids, right?
Right.
So we did like a rock band ensemble thing with the school's band program. So that's kind of where I kind of got rid of my stage fright, right? Then I did musical theater for the following 2 years after that. Musical theater, I brought up until college, where I did only one semester. I ended up dropping out, um, which actually led me to join the Navy. But as far as theater backgrounds, right, I've got a couple shows under my belt. I was taught how to go in front of an audience, cheating, to talk to people, things like that. So I've had a little bit of training in regards to, one, taking care of my voice, and two, being able to, I guess, speak in front of crowds. And interestingly enough, with the Navy, at the same time that I started doing PWE, I started doing an orientation gig, basically. So I would
Hmm.
be briefing 5 days a week. When you're in front of people at these shows, when you're in front of people constantly at work, you start to, and not to say that I don't get nervous, because I do, but you start to get comfortable going off of the fly and being able to just talk to people as people. When you know the crowd is
Right.
on your side, it makes it easier. I apologize if I'm speaking a little too much, by the way.
Oh no, no, no. This is great. So, um, So something I ran across, that I'm actually going to share my screen and show is a short that you have up on TikTok. It's kind of a day in the life of you, and I thought it was very clever, and it'll give people who aren't familiar with you or the life of a ring announcer kind of a taste of a day in your life. So I'm going
Let's
to
roll.
share my screen real quick and we will.
Oh, I love that video.
I do too. Like I said, I ran across it the other day, and I've watched it repeatedly, and it just makes me smile. So
I love Chapel Roan. I got to say that right now. I love Chapel Roan. I love that album. She's amazing. That day was something. That was one of the first times I've really had to travel pretty far. That was actually also, I believe, my first show with a different company, at least ring announcing. So that was my
mhm.
first IWE show. I got the call from Tim Blackman, who had seen some of my work over at PWE, and I was, I got to say, I marked out a little bit. I'm like, really? I was that good? Nice. I got a call from Tim Blackman, right? And he's been nothing but kind to me throughout this entire process, and it was a pleasure, and I thankfully I got to work with some of my friends, right? Some people that I've made connections with over at PWE as well. So, for context, I live in Augusta. Here's why I travel. My mom, she lives right outside of Charlotte. So, what ended up happening was I drove over to her place, stayed the night, we got some coffee, and then I drove again about 2 hours north of where she lives, I think, roughly. Lexington, North Carolina, and that's where the show was. And that's when I got the idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a TikTok out of this. And at this point, Chapel Roan's everywhere. It's like mid or early summer, and that song's all over the place. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that one. Lots of coffee. I love caffeine, especially on show days. It keeps me going and kind of gets me amped to be able to do this, right? I'm glad that you showed that video.
Absolutely, man. I can just tell that you are fueled by caffeine and passion.
You know what? I'm going to call that my when I start my band. That's going to be the name of my first album, Caffeine and Passion. I like that.
Very cool. Very
That's
cool.
awesome.
So, something I've seen a bit recently in some of the PWE related social media is it appears that you have some issues going on with Aaron Barry, who is a previous guest of mine here on the Throwdown. So tell me a bit about that and what's going on with that and where is that going?
I would like to consider myself a professional. As I said before, I'm in the Navy. I
Right.
take my job seriously. My job is to convey kind of what's going on as far as our, to our audience. When you come specifically to me and say, hey, can you help me, basically convey what's on my mind? And then when I do exactly that, but give context, and you get upset and your ego starts to kind of get a little inflated, that's not my problem.
No, it's
At the
not.
end of the day, I'm here to do a job. A lot of these other folks at PWE are here to do a job. If you can't handle the spotlight, get out. If you're going to get upset because things don't go your way, maybe this isn't the place for you. And I'm glad that Cowboy took it under his authority to go ahead and say, look, we're going to suspend you. We've told you multiple times. He wrinkled my good shirt. Still upset about that. We first met. He was this happy-go-lucky guy. He came out to what is it, Dolly Parton, working 9 to 5. What a
Oh
way!
yeah.
Happy-go-lucky guy, but somewhere along the way, Aaron just kind of
He got dark.
it got dark, and it would be nice to see that guy that I remember meeting when I first broke into PWE, so for him to come back. But here we are. Um, I don't really expect him to see at any of the shows. I don't. I mean, once we suspended him, he kind of took his boots and went home. And as far as I'm concerned, that's over with. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have to work with him again. Thankfully, I have a lot of talent that I can lend my voice to. I have a lot of talent that I can help, put over. And at that point, that's where we're at.
Awesome. So I'm presuming that you've been a fan of this stuff a good portion of your life. Is that accurate?
Conclusion. That is a very accurate. So, to date myself a little bit, this was about 2006 where I caught my first match, and I was a young kid. I was probably what 8 years old. I'm not good at math. I was born in '98 for context. 2006. I'm scrolling through channels online. My first match that I saw, just happening to flip channels, was Jimmy Wang Yang versus Tatanka on some random SmackDown.
Wow.
And I like to say that I've been a fan since then. So what does that make it? Almost 18 years now. What are we in 2024?
Yeah.
So yeah, almost 20 years. I've been a fan for 18 years. I've been a mark for about 10.
Yeah.
Once I started to learn more about the business aspect and started to learn more about, behind the scenes, once the dirt sheets started to pick up all this juicy
Oh,
gossip, all
yeah.
the releases, NJPW, I started getting into New Japan, TNA wrestling, things like that. So yeah, most of my life has revolved around this, and it's cool because I've lived multiple lives since then. I've lost people, I've lost opportunities, I've changed in so many different ways. I've joined the Navy, I went to college, I dropped out, I went to high school. I've fallen in love, fallen out of love. But guess what? Pro wrestling was still there. And it was just something that I always could come back to. So that's really what I appreciated about it.
Absolutely. And like I said before we went live, I've been varying levels of fandom for 40 plus years. And yeah, you said it very well. It'll always be there for you, even if you're not there for it. You can always come back.
Yep. Excuse me. And that's one of the biggest things that I've had kind of hammered into me with my mentors and people that I respect in this business. Now that I'm looking for more opportunities constantly and having to possibly have to give it up here in a couple months, still not sure about that, but it'll always be there. And even when you're in the business, right? It'll always be there to pick back up exactly where you left off. Whether you're a worker, commentator, announcer, ref, even security, you can always pick up back to a show and go back to it. So handle life, handle family, but it'll be here.
Yep. So away from all of the madness and hullabaloo that is wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies and interests?
Oof. So it started, I want to say in 2019, I started getting really big into classic film. I'm a big Humphrey Bogart fan. As a matter of fact, do you mind if I grab this poster to show you real quick?
Please do.
Oh, yeah. It's just right here. I've got this big. I started collecting old school film
Oh, nice.
memorabilia, and I found this poster over at a flea market. So I'm a big fan of classic film. I'm a big Humphrey Bogart guy, Lauren Bacall. I have 2 tattoos on my left arm from Gone with the Wind. Vivian Leigh is one of my favorite actresses. So I'm still kind of plugged into acting, film, things like that. Excuse me. Other than that, I love music. I can listen to music, play music all day. I played guitar in high school. As far
I play
as
bass, actually.
No way.
Yeah.
See, that band might start a lot quicker than we thought.
It might. It might. Well, we'll have to make something happen here.
Right, what was it? Caffeine and passion? Passion
Yeah.
and caffeine? Who's passion? Who's caffeine? I can.
I'll do caffeine.
There we go. Excellent. Yeah, music is a big one. Other than that, I just love being. Every now and again, play some video games, watch some TV. With fun fact, I have 5 cats. Love them all, and I love to just kind of hang out with them, laze out. I guess I consider that one of my hobbies, is kind of just hanging out with my dumb cats.
Oh yeah, we have 3 shelter rescue Chihuahua mixes,
Oh,
and they keep us entertained and busy.
I
So,
bet. Never a dull moment with Chihuahuas, huh?
oh no, no, they are all terrific. But it was funny that you showed that Casablanca poster because you know when I was born, it was back in the days when the fathers were basically put out in the waiting room. They weren't in the birthing room, so to speak. So while I was being born, my dad was watching Casablanca on this
Hey,
TV set in the waiting room. For the umpteenth time. He'd seen it many times, but I was born to Casablanca.
that's amazing. That
Yeah.
is phenomenal. Yeah, that's one of my favorite films for sure. I would say that one and A Tie with Gone with the Wind. Two films that kind of got me through my schooling whenever I first joined the Navy. Kind of kept me centered, kept me out of trouble. You know, just kind of traveling back to that time period. It's always fun to. I love those movies. They have some interesting stories to tell in a really different medium than we do today. Felt more
Hmm.
grounded, you know.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about this, before we went live, but you mentioned that your day job is as a linguist for the National Security Agency. You probably can't tell us much about what you do, but tell us a little bit about your day job.
Well, I work on computers. Like I said, I started transitioning away from all of that. I pretty much just help with orientation and any kind of odd jobs here and there nowadays. Which again, that was one of my favorite jobs was working with orientation. I had a great team, just core me and a couple others. One of whom is honestly one of my rocks as far as the building that we worked in. She was always nothing but kind and always, helping kind of guide me. I always saw her as kind of an older sister. Um, and with that short team, we were able to kind of welcome, and I always say this, welcoming people to a new workforce is one of the most important things you can do. I was one of the first people that they saw, and I was really running with that. So being an orientation lead, I think if I could honestly go back to that, I would. Because that was easily one of my favorite jobs of all time, including pro wrestling. It was just getting to talk to people and reassuring them and saying, hey, you're in a new environment, but I promise you, stick with it and you're going to love what you do. Even if you don't, somebody here will advocate for you. And just seeing people kind of walking in the hallways and everybody just saying, hey, man, how you doing? And me being able to see people that I brought in around February now who are rock stars at whatever job they do. That to me was one of the most rewarding things. It's something that I feel like I didn't really have too much when I first got into this business, right?
Hmm.
Was a welcoming face, and I wanted to do that, right? So that's sort of what I do now, and that's what I'm going to be doing for a while. Um, Up until I move back to California to do some different kind of training, and then I guess we'll see where the wind takes me from there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So are you originally from Augusta, or if not, where are you from?
So I like to say I've gotten both paradigms.
Okay.
I was born in San Francisco, California,
Okay.
and spent the first bit of years of my formative years. I'd spend summers out there, things like that. My sister, a good bit of my family still lives out there. My dad still lives out there in the Bay Area. However, I did move with my mom and my other sister right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So, like I said, both paradigms. Having lived in the West Coast where everything is so different, and the South where everything is very different compared to what I was used to. Everybody says book bag instead of backpack, things like that. those are two that I consider my hometowns. My mother still lives right outside of Charlotte, a small town called Kannapolis. Fun fact: Dale Earnhardt Sr. was from there. They have a big statue where he there's some park out there, but that's where he lived. Same with George Clinton. That's where I went to high school. That's where I went to school for many years. I still consider that my hometown. I have many dear friends there. Augusta happened because of the military. I got stationed here back in 2019, and I've been here. Sorry, 2019, and I've been here since.
Gotcha. I was just looking at the chat. Keith Andrews says, "Let's go," and then we've got a Betty Jones Wright is watching.
Hey, Miss Betty.
Oh, is that Miss Betty?
That's Miss Betty. We love Miss Betty.
I would love to have Miss Betty on the Throwdown.
Ooh, I would love to see that. I bet she's got some interesting stories.
I bet she does too. We might have to make this happen.
Yes, I would be all over it. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I met Miss Betty briefly when we were at the show back in July, and she is amazing.
Oh no, she talk about support, right?
Yeah.
At this point, it's almost like she's one of us. It really is. And she pretty much is one of us. Right? Talk about community. Talk about support. We try to support her just as much as she supports us. Same with Keith Andrews. If you're not familiar with the name, Keith Andrews Media,
the king of all media.
The king of all media. We love Keith. He really doesn't like it when I give him shout outs. Every time I get the crowd to get a little Keith action going on. But we love Keith. He's great. Makes us look good, right?
So, they say that in the wild world of wrestling, the best personas are essentially yourself turned up to 11. So tell me a bit about in-ring Alexander and kind of compare and contrast him with everyday you.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of hear it in my voice a little bit. Like here, I'm kind of just talking. And then I just get a little bit of breath behind it. And that's where you get the voice of PWE, right? So really, it is just me. It's just a little elevated, a little over the top. I've been trying to get more movement in, trying to be a little more animated as a character. But it's me having fun. It's me recognizing people in the audience, and it's me kind of just enjoying my time, right? And you feel it. That adrenaline is something else. So sometimes it's hard to not just be yourself, reacting like I would react in a normal day to day, right? In my entrance video, I have a lot of the old film, right? Things that I'm passionate about on the outside. It's just part of my vibe, I guess. I did have an old gimmick that when I tried to train, when I first started kind of training and playing with characters and things like that, it was a comedy gimmick. I always like to say it was like Charlie Chaplin meets Eddie Guerrero, to where I would be this dastardly heel, and I would be very slapstick. Right? I would kind of move around and do that old school thing, get behind the ref. And when I'm falling for like 20 minutes, right? Having not much experience, but kind of being shoehorned out to do a quick match in front of a couple people, and not having character, not having the training, not being able to do those moves, I kind of went to comedy. That's what I knew being in theater. So when I get into that persona, that's really just my goofy side. That's me who thinks about the absurd stuff. And when I'm making videos and stuff, that's me. It's just my goofball side that really only my wife sees. When I'm prancing around the house in my underwear, making weird noises and yelling at the cats. So that, minus the underwear part, that's kind of where, if I do decide to work again, I definitely want to work with that gimmick, almost like a mime. But me, thankfully I've managed to with this and with other things kind of build up that confidence that I did not have in my formative years. Uh, and that confidence really takes that character, right? And it influences my life as well. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, we've kind of touched on the very first match or show that you worked, but tell us about your favorite match that you have announced for.
immediately off the top of my head was one of the first times that I got to hear myself after the fact announce a main event. This
Mhm.
was the current champion was Drew Adler. He was the Savannah River
Love
Brewing
Drew.
Company champ. I love Drew. I consider him one of my rocks as far as people to look toward for advice and for guidance. I love Drew.
Drew was my second guest.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so you got to speak to Drew.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, no, genuinely a plethora of experience and a plethora of kindness at that.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a good dude.
but when he gets in between those ropes, he's gonna he's gonna tell you what's what. He's not afraid to do so, and I'm sure his partner Paul Lasher understands that.
Hmm.
This thing about Drew, if he likes you, he likes you. But once he gets in between those ropes, it's business. That's
Oh yeah.
business, Drew, right? But it was him who was the current champion going up against Cody Fluffman, the challenger.
Yeah.
And it was for the Savannah River Brewing Company Championship. And with our main events, we always like to make them feel like special attractions. Both people will be in the ring, no music, it's just me. And finally getting to hear that and think, wow, that sounded cool. And then being able to see that feeling that I get, that fuzziness in my fingers, it's coming out and it's sounding something very powerful. That was one of my favorite matches to announce. One of the favorite matches that I've seen, though, I always think back to the first main event from the first show we ever did with the Canadian Christmas special Wade Adams against Sean Legacy. Whew, that was insanity. It was intense, and we thought we were going to lose the building that night. Wade busted open the back of his head after a splash from Sean onto a table. And we had to, we saw a little bit of blood. And we were like, oh, that's a wrap. One show, one and done. They're never going to let us come back here. Lo and behold, we've been here since. So,
Yeah. I've actually had Sean on as well. Another really terrific guy, and man, I am so happy for him with the WWE ID thing. I mean, that is a deserving guy.
whew,
I am just over the moon for him.
100%. When it comes to commitment and when it comes to just heart and soul for the business,
Hmm.
when it comes to just growth, and not just physically, right? That is the embodiment of what this business should be, what a professional wrestler is. And Sean, yeah, he eats, sleeps, lives, breathes this, and I'm glad to see the success that he's been getting. And
Yeah,
just being
yeah,
able to have some of the instances that I've had with him where I get to speak to him to get a little bit of advice is grand to me. Just to be able to rub elbows with that guy is it's a gift, and I'm glad that I've been put into that position, to have influence from guys like that.
absolutely. And uh, you know, I'm excited to see where it all goes for him. I mean, I think big things are coming.
Oh, 100%. It's to the moon with him. He's the
Yep,
galaxy's only hero, and he's going to be up in the stars very soon.
for sure. So we kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'm presuming it may be the trip that TikTok originated from. But what is the longest that you have ever driven to get to a match?
I think it was that. I think it was that gig. I want to say Lexington from Augusta there. Had I not stopped, was about 4.5 hours. I could be
Hmm.
wrong. Um, so not too far, not terribly far. What was it? But I did stop in between, so really it was kind of a split drive. I just stopped at my mom's, just hung out there for a bit. So
Right.
really, yeah, continuous. You know what? I did drive back that night by myself, and I worked at 5 a.m. the next morning. Not
Woo.
to say that that's like a crazy thing. I know a lot of workers do it, right? They have their shoot jobs and doing their thing, but I did drive 4.5 hours. I didn't even change out of my suit. I just got in the car and took off. Called my sister. We just chatted the entire way. I complained about traffic. So 4.5 hours would probably be it. I was pretty beat. I had one of the
Oh,
best
no
showers I
doubt.
had that night.
Yeah. So, I don't know that this necessarily applies, but I'll ask it just because I just find this to be an interesting question, and that is if you've worked in other countries or cultures, how have you or would you handle language barriers when interacting with fans and working with the talent?
I think the beauty of being a worker. So I'll answer this from both paradigms, right? I think the
Okay.
beauty of being a worker is wrestling, and this is what I've been told from people who've been doing this for a long time. Wrestling really is a universal language. In every
Hmm.
language, you know what that means. You know,
Oh yeah.
you know what that means. Uh, on top of that, so from my perspective, as a ring announcer, depends on whether or not the show's in English. But me being the language nerd that I am, if I know that I have a gig in about a month, I'm going to learn a good bit of phrases, right? So I'm fluent in Hebrew, Spanish, and of course English. So if I miraculously got a gig in Israel tomorrow, I'd be just fine. If I miraculously ended up in, I guess, Mexico tomorrow, I'd be just fine. But any other country, I personally, I like to do my homework. I think interacting on a very baseline level, say I go to Japan, sumimasen, things like that. Excuse me, hello, do you speak English even, right? But I think the companies too know, right? If you're getting booked, say like Sean right now in Germany, I'm sure there's people equipped to say, all right, hey, we got this American guy. Does anybody know how to speak English very well, right? They'll get a guy that can probably translate for them. I think depending on the company, it would make sense for them to have somebody on board, right? Those would be my thoughts.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I actually in high school took 3 years of Spanish and then took a year in college as well. And I haven't really had to use it terribly often, but for a number of years before doing what I'm doing now, I was actually a paramedic.
Oh,
And sometimes we would get to a scene and I would be the only one aside from the patient that spoke any Spanish. So,
wow.
having to, um, you can get by pretty well by just stringing together words, and you can kind of at least get the gist across.
Right.
And that was actually always kind of a fun challenge. Those situations where I actually had to try to speak Spanish. And
I'm assuming by fun you don't mean the paramedic aspect. I mean, I can imagine the language bit fun, but due to just
right.
a car crash, I can't imagine that.
Well, there were some elements of it that were fun and actually extremely funny. But
As a paramedic,
yeah,
wow.
I'll share a quick story. We got a call one time. It came in as trouble unknown. And with those, you're going in, and you never know exactly what in the world's gonna be going on. So we get to this apartment complex, and we're driving through the parking lot, and this guy comes running up to the truck, and we're like, did you call? And he's like, yeah. And he said, there's not much wrong with me. He said, the main problem I'm having is that I can see you, but you can't see me. I've turned invisible.
What?
Yes. So we got him up in the back of the truck, and I take my vital signs, and we go en route to the hospital. So I get on the radio to the hospital, and I said, we're en route with this, however old he was, male. Chief complaint is he claims power of invisibility. And so at that point, I let go of the mic because I wanted to hear what the hospital was going to say to that. And there was this pause, and they're like, "We're clear. We'll see you in a few." So,
he was on something heavy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, he was not on pure air.
I was gonna say. I told him to stay away from those poppy seed muffins.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, so
I see what you mean by it being funny.
There were some funny times. There was a lot of horrific time too, but you kind of cling to the funny memories.
It'd be funny if that was the guy that you had to be bilingual for that one day. A ti te puedo ver. Pero a mí, tú no me puedes ver. ¿Entiendes? Like, wait, okay. What? Is my Spanish that bad? That's amazing.
So, what has been your most unusual encounter with a fan?
Honestly, thankfully, I've never personally had any crazy experiences or anything unusual with any kind of fans. Although I've seen a couple instances at this point where, and thankfully it's not my job to handle it. And it's not terribly negative. It happens, especially in some towns where they don't really have too much wrestling. Kids will get a little too excited and will start going in the ring. And that's not only, it's a liability for our equipment, but it's a liability for them too. They can get hurt.
Right.
Like I've had it's sometimes it's absolutely adorable, but I've had a kid come up and try to take my mic and like try to yell into it. I'm just kind of like, hey, we're in the middle of a match, and I know when the it's about to end, right? I know the finish, or I know the guy's going over, so I'm like, hey, dude, I'm gonna need that, right? And I don't want to just yank the mic from this poor kid, right? And I'm just like, hey, buddy, where are your parents? Again,
why don't you go look for them?
Right. Let me do this announcement, and then we're gonna have to call security, and we need to figure out what's going on here. Again, it's not terribly negative. It's just something that happens. Kids get a little too excited, and I'm not in the business to just go, no, stop. Right? They remember that. They may never ever want to go to a wrestling show ever again, so they get a little overzealous. And before when I started ring announcing, I did a little bit of security work around the area. And that security work, right, I'm holding back kids. I'm just like, and a kid gets excited, starts running. I got to put my hand out. I got to say, hey, buddy, we just want to keep you back here so you're safe, all right? There's a certain way you got to talk to, a certain way you got to handle it. Half the time, I just tell security to figure it out. Bean, his name is Bean, CD Bean, is our head of security. And thankfully, he always handles things like that with grace. So he always knows how to, deal with kids, and he's a sweetheart. So, we never want to ruin the experience for the fan. Thankfully, I've never seen anybody go too far. Same with kids. But it happens. It's just a part of the gig.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So I do want to remind everybody that's watching this live, if you have questions or comments, throw them in the chat, and we will, take a look at them at the end. So, as a ring announcer, who would you say are some of your influences in terms of are there other ring announcers that you try to sort of loosely model yourself after or anything like that?
I will say number one for me is the Dapper Yapper Justin Roberts. Uh, that's only because I remember working or seeing him work since I was a kid, right?
Hmm.
WWECW days, whenever he was announcing
Oh
for,
yeah,
and I was a big AEW guy from the get go. To see Justin Roberts come back was a big deal. It was cool. I think I've seen. I believe his name is Mike Rome as well from
yeah,
NXT a while back. These folks will be very professional in the way they dress, right?
right.
So for me, that's one of the most important things. If I'm going to be up in front of people, I need to look and I need to feel confident. And for me, the bow tie helps, right? And yeah, Justin Roberts, I like the way his infliction works and his grit in some ways, with that rustling, in his voice.
Hmm.
So I've noticed I've taken a lot more influence from him than I think, while still adding my own flair because I do have a very different voice. So I take inspiration from the way that he speaks, right? Rather than "here is your winner," I say "the winner of this match," and that's only because I, like a lot of other wrestlers and like a lot of people who get into this business, you emulate the people that you see and the people that you like. I've done that in some ways. Having done this
Yep.
for a year now, I've noticed myself more and more kind of getting into my own voice. But I would say he's definitely one of them. Mike Rome being another because I like the way he's a little more whimsical with it, less, you know, former. I believe I saw that Mike Rome is actually he was a former Disney employee. He did like the Jungle Cruise or something, which I found really
Really
interesting. Yeah, found that
interesting.
fascinating.
So, do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan? A match that you can have watched it a million times and it just never gets old?
Whew. Okay, my first live pay per view scene. Well, not live, not in person, but
Right,
live on TV. First one I've
right.
ever ordered, and I thank my mom for this. Mom, if you're watching, thank you. Same with my buddy Miguel. I went to my buddy Miguel's house and we watched WrestleMania 25 together.
Okay.
Again, dating myself, I was still a kid, but we got to see Undertaker, Shawn Michaels,
Yep.
and to me, that is the pinnacle of storytelling. The
Yep.
pinnacle and the thing is, it's the pinnacle of spectacle. That's what I liked about it. Undertaker, this larger than life character, Shawn Michaels, the showstopper. To me, that is what wrestling was to me as a kid, right? And I get a lot of flack because I actually do like Shawn, especially from all the Bret Hart fans out there. I apologize. Try not to eat my head off, but to me, that I can still watch that and just the entrances alone, I get chills. You know,
Oh yeah.
having that memory cemented of me watching that for the first time, I'm never going to get that back, that feeling.
Right.
But I'm watching it with somebody that I consider to be a brother, right? And that it's just magic. It was all created to just, and I think it might be a little bit of a nostalgia thing, right? But I could still watch the match and it'd be one of my favorite matches of all time just because of
Oh yeah. Yep.
that.
One of my top three favorite matches of all time is from Mania 20, the three-way between Chris Benoit, Hunter, and Shawn.
That's right.
Um, you know, uh, I can I've been able to successfully separate Chris Benoit's uh, I guess resume of work from the man himself and how he ended up.
Right.
I can still watch and enjoy Chris Benoit. Um, you know, a terrible human being, but amazing, amazing wrestler. And that match is, like you said, storytelling and in-ring psychology is just off the charts.
100%. I can definitely respect that. I'll probably have to go rewatch it. It's been a while since I've seen that one. But
It's a good one.
excuse me, I thought I had a sneeze coming. Sorry.
Don't you hate it when you get a sneeze stuck?
Oh, 100%. 100%. It always leaves something to be desired. It's never fun.
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite venue that you have announced in? Is there a venue that has become your favorite to work a show in? And if you have a favorite, what is it that makes it your favorite?
I think Savannah River Brewing Company is always going to be a special place in my heart. It's not only do I love the bar itself outside of pro wrestling, the way that we're transforming this what looks like it shouldn't even be able to fit a ring into a proper wrestling with a stage and a wrestling venue, right? You've seen it.
Right.
To me, and then the mural in the back, I'm not sure if it's still there now, but it just, to me, it just looks stunning, and it's something different. To me, that's always going to have a special place in my heart. Although I do remember and I do respect the way that Viral Pro Wrestling takes a regular gym, right, a basketball court, and turns it into, a really captivating setup, and their production value is phenomenal. I did get to do a little bit of work with them. I can't remember which month it was right now, but I did get to do a little bit of work with them whenever Joe Hendry did their show here in Augusta.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I'd ever done it. And the way, when you're in ring, what got me was how wide the fans section was.
Hmm.
So you get in the ring, and fans are, it's almost like the way it feels to see the ocean. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
From as far as my peripheral on my left, as far as the peripheral on my right, I just saw people. And I believe it was the most amount of people that I've ever been in front of and done wrestling in front of. So when I did and it wasn't ring announcing, it was mostly just hype man work. It was like an MC host type deal.
Right.
Whew, the chills that I got. What was funny is the lights went out in the middle of I come out, it's almost as soon as I stepped out of the curtain, boom, lights go down. So when I find lights come back up, I'm in the ring, and I hear that roar, and I'm like, ooh, we're on. And then I did my trademark CSRA, right? And then I
Hmm.
looked around, and I could feel it. It was like chills. It was breathtaking. And to me, I think that venue is very special with the way that they set it up. But for me, Savannah River Brewing Company is always going to be a special place in my heart for the way that we've set up in there, and how special it feels. And seeing people that we know and love there too. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah, I had seen in your social media, about that show that you referenced, and that you got to spend a little bit of time with Joe Hendry. That dude has cracked the code on going viral. And
100%.
but at the same time, despite all of this fame that's come his way, he seems largely unaffected. I mean, which is very refreshing and very cool.
Oh, 100%. No, he was very professional, and he was very kind. And that's always one of my
Mhm.
biggest things about this business or any kind of success that anybody may find, no matter what industry. Having that kindness and remembering that you were, he might have been in someone like me's shoes at one point, right? And he just exuberates that. He is nothing but kind and always super receptive. And I got to tell him, look, I heard you on a podcast with Chris Van Vliet. I remember you specifically saying, my buddy got me on the phone with John Cena. John Cena took the time to speak to Joe Hendry, and he doesn't know him. He didn't know who he was. He was just some fan. He's got millions of them, but he took the time to make his day, despite the fact that he wasn't there, right, with him.
Right.
And I told Joe Hendry, I was like, you've sort of done something similar for me. You've you've taken your time while you're here working. You could be stretching or going over whatever, but I said, hey, I would like to speak with you real quick, and he took a picture and everything. We sat there and pet John Schuyler's dog together. It's great.
Nice.
Um, but nothing but kindness and being able to tell him how he impacted me, it felt great. Uh, while I kind of don't get starstruck anymore like I did when I was a kid, I realize these are just people, but it affected me, right? I like what you're doing, I respect what you're doing, and I have to tell you. And he thanked me for it, and shook hands, and that was that.
Awesome.
But yeah,
Awesome.
phenomenal guy.
So, what are your thoughts in general on the current state of the wrestling industry?
I think now that WWE has gotten, so to speak, I guess, rid of the fat of the mishaps, the Vince McMahon whole debacle, where it's all of that. They're the cages are off, the shackles
Hmm.
are gone. They're able with Triple H and what his vision is for that company. The shackles are off. It's to the races with these guys.
Yep.
Although that lust can always run out. We've seen it with AEW, the lust of it being new, right? WWE has a new product. It ebbs and flows. The business always has a history of doing that. Eventually, people are going to get sick of the bloodline. Not saying that their work is going to diminish, because it won't. But if they've seen it, fans have seen it, they'll get over it. The state of the business right now is WWE is definitely back into the number one seat. And it is sad to see what has happened with AEW, but I'm still a big fan of what they do, right? And I'm happy that people have a place to work. To me, that's
Oh
always the
yeah.
most important thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different places to work, and we're cultivating that as well, giving people places to train and giving young folks like even like me, right? Somebody with a dream. Cowboy has been able to give them an opportunity, and a lot of different places are able to do that. I think the main thing that we want to see happen with pro wrestling, which is happening, and I'm very thankful for that, is to see it go healthy and to see it done right. And for the rest of my life, I'm going to make sure that I embody that in any way that I can. You know, professionalism and fun. That's what it should be. That's what we want it to be. And I think it's going toward that direction.
Absolutely. So, what is your take on the role that social media is playing as a promotional tool in wrestling?
Whew, I think it's a big deal. I think it is a big deal. If you have the right amount of followers, your game, your A game is set. You're going to get bookings because they know that you're going to bring eyes to their product, right? So long as you can still perform, obviously. You still have to be good. It's not all about followers, thankfully. I think the fact that pro wrestling is so accessible nowadays means that the bar is set higher. If you know how to do the social media game, it's almost like a it's almost like a skeleton key, because at that point, that's when you're able to talk to promoters. That's when you're able to reach out, right? And to me, it's making finding work in different places a lot easier, and that to me, that's a good thing. As long as workers have a place to work, have a place to do what they love, it's almost like it's making the pro wrestling world a little smaller, right?
Right.
So that's to me, it's great how accessible things can be nowadays. And it's on top of that, it's an opportunity to get yourself over.
Hmm.
Do right, even podcasts like this. This is made possible by social media. Here we are
Yep.
having a conversation, right? To me, that's a huge deal. It's an opportunity to get yourself over. I love that.
Absolutely. So you're still a pretty young guy, but knowing everything that you know at this point in your life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Be kinder to people and have more confidence in yourself. I think those were two. I would just love to go back and do that. You know, I think had I not made those mistakes that I've made before, I wouldn't be who I am today. They were great
Right.
learning experiences, but I would say let's be cognizant of how you treat people. To me, I think that would be one of the most important things that I would like to go back and tell myself, and it's something that I embody every single day. Treat people
Gotcha.
with kindness. Be cognizant of the fact of the effect that you have on people. Would be the advice that I would give myself for sure.
Gotcha. So, do you have any pre-show traditions, rituals, superstitions, any things that you try to do consistently before you go on?
Ooh, every single show so far. Okay, not every single show, but most of the shows at Savannah River Brewing Company, I've had gyoza. I've had gyoza before almost every show, and those shows have went off without a hitch. And I give some to somebody, to the Cowboy's daughter actually, who runs our tech. I would share
Hmm.
one with her. She loves gyoza. I love gyoza. So probably that would be one of them. But of course, going over things like my introductions and our cards, things like that. And of course, I gotta hug Miss Betty every show, every time she
Oh
comes.
yeah.
It looks like we have a question, by the way.
Oh, let's see what we've got here. Okay. Well, we've got some comments here.
Oh yeah, looks like that was back to whenever we were talking about Shawn Michaels there, Mr.
Yeah,
WrestleMania, 100%.
and Dre the Goat.
Oh yeah, yes sir. I love Drake.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like that.
Dre's Dre's also been on the show, and he and Florida Man keep me in stitches.
100%. You know, talk about a guy who is just an elevated version of the gimmick. Oh yeah, we love Joe Hendry.
Yep. And actually, my dad.
Hey, amazing. Thank you.
So let's see here. Let's get back to where we were. Oh my gosh. Um,
I apologize. I didn't mean to hide
oh
you.
no! It just it made some stuff scroll. But so something that we've done in all of these that has just been kind of fun is we've let the current guest pose a question for the next guest, and so I had to actually go back a ways to find a question that would apply kind of to your situation. And so the question that was posed was, what would be your dream event to ring announce for?
Ooh, what would be my dream ring of? So is that like a proper event, or is it just like a stipulation or match?
Uh, like an event, uh, like
Like a pay
a
per view?
WrestleMania, yeah, a pay per view, something like that. What would be your dream event?
Everybody always dreams of announcing Mania, of course. But imagine being in that huge stadium and your voice ringing through the rafters. That would be something.
Yeah.
But Wrestle Kingdom would be insane.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and of course, my Japanese is basically zero. But for that, I would try to learn. If they, for whatever reason, ever gave me a call, I would be there in a heartbeat. Wrestle Kingdom would be amazing.
It would. It would. And speaking of Japanese and everything, I have got such respect for Kenny Omega for completely
Yes.
embracing Japan, the culture, the language, every aspect of Japan. He totally embraced. I mean, becoming fluent in Japanese after basically growing up in Canada. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that is really cool. That's a guy I have a lot of respect for.
Especially given what he's going through right now. Uh,
Yeah,
with the I forget the name of the illness, but
diverticulitis. Uh,
that's right.
Actually, interestingly enough, I was diagnosed 7 years ago with diverticulitis.
Wow.
And I had surgery at the time, had about 3 feet of my colon removed. They were able to do it with laparoscopy, so the incisions were very small, and and with some minor dietary changes, 7 years later, I've had no recurrence and no problems since. So and it's weird because normally it's apparently a very painful condition, but I never had any pain. You
Glad.
know, I uh, I I discovered it just through some other means, but never had any moment of pain. But yeah, I feel a kinship with Kenny, having been through diverticulitis. It's no joke.
No,
And I'm hoping he can have a good comeback, and have a healthy string.
no, 100%. I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like. But that's interesting. So you know better than anybody else what he might be going through right now, and to still, I imagine he's training. I mean, I heard somewhere in the rumor mill that he might be going back to New Japan, which would be phenomenal. He's actually my wife's favorite wrestler, and she hates wrestling, but she'll watch a Kenny match every now and again.
You know, my wife is anything but a wrestling fan,
Right.
but since I started doing these live streams, she actually now at least understands why I love it. So
Good.
that's
No,
progress. I mean,
it's very much so. It is a hard thing to understand for somebody who may not have just either grown up with it or who just naturally is a fan. It's rare to see. I'd like to say that a lot of people were born into this, or they were bit by the bug. I feel like those are the two ways that you end up a wrestling fan. You're either born into it, or you just naturally are into it, or you get bit by that bug somehow. I got bit, right? A lot of people get bit by that bug, and it's hard to shake. That's for sure.
yep, it is. It is. So, since this is, part of a series, do you have a question that you would like to pose to the next guest? And I can go ahead and tell you the next guest is actually tomorrow night at 8 p.m. I've got a Florida based referee named Todd Harris, who works a lot with Atomic Legacy Wrestling down in Central Florida.
Great. Ooh, that's tough. Um, does it have to be wrestling related?
No,
Okay. Let's see.
if you don't have anything at the moment, it's not the end of the world. So,
I think I've got one.
okay,
Let me see if I can get this word in correctly. Again, it's kind of goofy, but
that's fine. Goofy's good.
good. Let's see. One second. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh, wow.
Again, goofy.
How would you answer that?
Ducks are crazy. Horses, I think, would be
Or
a
a little more
violation.
mellow?
And if they're the size of a duck, you kind of probably just kick it over, right? That's my thought process.
Yeah,
However, 100 of them. At what point are you going to get tired, right?
that's
That's where
true.
the dilemma
The
lies.
number, the numbers game.
What was this gentleman's name?
Todd Harris.
Todd Harris. If you're watching this, I hope you study up. Learn the fighting tactics against those ducks. Not saying I'm sending your way, but yeah, just
Absolutely.
something goofy, something to lighten the mood. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. So we're getting toward the end of things. So do you have any upcoming shows or anything at all that you'd like to give some hype to?
Yes. Let me pull up that calendar now. So I would like to give a shout out to IWE's upcoming show this Saturday. They are prepping for a really big show in January, and I know this one is going to be great. We have many dear friends over at IWE. I will personally be there backstage, and I may be up on doing some work with them as well. So you may catch a glimpse of me, just a quick little spoiler, over at IWE's. Let me see the name of it real quick. IWE's Kings of Controversy 3 this Saturday, November 23rd, here in Augusta. Phoenix Wrestling Experience, of course, my home. We have the Canadian Christmas Special Thursday, December 12th, here in Augusta, Georgia. But before then, we have Winter Warfare over at Society Garden, Thursday, December 19th. That's actually after. Sorry about that. Thursday, December 19th, Winter Warfare, Phoenix Wrestling Experience, Macon, Georgia, the Society Garden. Before then, December 12th, Thursday, Savannah River Brewing Company for the Canadian Christmas Special. You might recognize that name.
Wade Adams. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's our champion. Thursday, December 12th for our holiday themed show, and actually our 1 year anniversary over at PWE at the brewery.
Nice.
Some places that you guys can see me.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely want to thank you for your time. This has been an absolute blast. And I do want to take a final look through the chats and see if anybody's. So let's see here. We do have something. Do you think in the near future you could be featured in a storyline like ring announcer turned wrestler?
Ring announcer turned wrestler. Take a lot of training to get back to that, but I never like to close doors. We'll say that much. We'll see if some more training is here in my near future, and we'll see if I can get in between those ropes one of these days.
Miss Betty's talking.
Whoop whoop.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
And she says, "See you there."
Oh yeah.
I'm sure she'll be there with bells on.
100%. I'm excited. Miss Betty's great. We love her.
And over in the Instagram chat, we've got a few people over there. Don't really have any comments, but we've Cowboys actually in the chat and Instagram. 3D Luchador, that guy wrestling, and Coyote Sandstorm are all hanging out in the Instagram chat. So anyway, like I said, we're at the end of things, but thank you for your time. For those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be watching this on replays, thank you for that. If you like what we have going here, continue to spread the word. This thing is is really taking on a life of its own. I mean, I am booked through the month of December. I'm taking the last 2 weeks of December off for the holidays. But I've already got my first few bookings in January. So I mean, it's things are definitely continuing in a very positive direction. I am going to briefly put my Linktree QR code up on the screen, and if you have an opportunity, definitely take a look at my Linktree and go to my other socials and give me a follow. And like I said, tomorrow night I've got at 7 p.m. or actually tomorrow night is 8 p.m. Eastern. I've got episode 52 of the Throwdown with Florida-based referee Todd Harris. And then this coming Monday, the 25th, back at 7 p.m. Eastern, I've got episode 53 with another Georgia-based wrestler, the King of Fades, Jay Tyler. Uh, Jay trains with WWA4 here in Atlanta. Trains with AR Fox and some of those folks. And I've actually had several WWA4 folks on here recently, and they're a good bunch of folks. And I'm always excited to get folks from WWA4 on here. So anyway, everybody have a wonderful rest of your night. Be safe, love each other, and keep throwing down.